welcome my students to this lesson. And today we are going to study the microprocessor systems. And let's get to the introduction of the microprocessor systems. And a microprocessor is a computer processor where the data processing logic and control is included on a single integrated circuit or a small number of integrated circuits. Or the microprocessor, you can see that the microprocessor is a multi-purpose, clock-driven, register-based digital integrated circuit that accepts binary data as input, processes it according to instructions stored in the memory, and provides results as the output. Basically, a microprocessor operates like a computer. Let's say it's a computer, and you know that in a computer, we normally feed the computer with some data. That data is taken to the processor, whereby it is processed, and finally we get the output. So let's get to the block diagram of a microcomputer. And a microcomputer has got several components. The first component is the address decoder. The other one is the input device. The other one is the output device. We have the memory. We have the interface device. Also. Then the input/output device. And they are abbreviated like this. Once you see that, you have to recall that it is the input/output devices. Then the other component is the microprocessor. And now I want us to discuss some of these parts of a microcomputer. And let's get to the first one. The first one is the microprocessor. And a microprocessor is this one. Let's get to describe this and see what it is. And a microprocessor, it is an integrated circuit that contains all the functions of a central processing unit of a computer. When you talk of the microprocessor basically it is the CPU. You know that in a CPU of a computer, that is where all the processes take place. Let's go to the second component, which is the input device. And an input device, it is a device that is used to bring data into the system. Remember that we said that in a computer, we have to feed data into a computer, then the data is processed in the processor, which is the CPU, then finally we get the output to the screens. Now, we have some of those components that are used to feed the data into the system. The first one is the keyboard. You know that the function of the keyboard just got some keys, whereby you type the keys, then the information of the data is taken to the processor for processing, then we get the output. The other component that is used to input the data into the processor is the mouse. The other one is the microphone, you have the barcode reader, and the rest. These are some of the examples of input devices that we have that feed data into the processor. The other component is an output device. And an output device is a device that is used to send data out of the system. Remember that once you feed the data into the processor of a computer, we expect some output, and that output is either displayed on the screens or in some other means of output. We have examples of output devices in a computer. For example, we have the monitor. Monitor, basically, it is the screen of the computer. That is where we normally see our output. The other one is the printer. Remember, once you place any command into the computer, either to print, you see the output from the printer because you see the outcome of what you are printing. So we have a printer. The other one is the speakers. Some other times you get to hear some sound that comes from the CPU. That shows that the data that was processed, maybe it was in form of a sound. So that sound gives us the output. And that sound, we normally hear it from the speakers. and we have others. The other component is the input stock output devices. This combines the two of them, and these are devices that allow the computer system to interact with the outside world by moving data into and out of the system. So it's like we have combined the input stock and output devices together. So that is it. The other one is the interface. An interface, it is the path for communication between two components. So in a computer, we must have an interface. Remember, if you're having some two components like an input device and another device such as the memory. The input device is coupled to the memory through the interface. It is through the interface whereby we get to connect the input device to the memory. So the interface connects the memory and the memory connects the input device and the memory. So it's like it is interfacing them together. We have the other component which is the address decoder, and this is a binary decoder that has two or more inputs for address bits and one or more outputs for address bits for device selection signals. So when it comes to signals in a computer, signals are usually selected, and the function of this decoder is to select those signals into various components in a microcomputer. Let's go to the other component, which is the memory. And the memory, in simple terms, it is used to store data and instructions. So that is where your data and instructions are stored. Let's go to the other one. We have the buses now, and in buses there are three types. We have the data bus, the control bus, and the address bus. Let's get to discuss the three buses. The first one is the data bus, and we are here. We have this address bus, data bus, and control bus. And you can see that these buses, in fact, they carry signals from the microprocessor, which is then distributed to these devices. So this microprocessor contains the CPU, which performs the processes. So once that data has been processed, it is released in terms of signals. So some of the data goes to the memory, the other goes to the input and the output devices. And as you can see, the input and output devices has been connected to the microprocessor using the interface, because we said that the interface connects two components together. We have this other interface which connects output devices and the microprocessor also. So once those signals have been released from the microprocessor, they are taken to the input interface and to the output interface, having been interconnected by these interfacing devices. Let's go to the other to discuss this. And the first one is the data bus. And the data bus is a system within a computer or device consisting of a connector or set of wires that provide transportation of data. So in simple terms, the function of the data bus, it consists of so many wires that carry data, and we normally transport this data to various components in a microcomputer. The other component is the control bus, and the control bus, simply, it is a computer bus that is used by the CPU to communicate with the devices that are contained within the CPU. So in simple terms, the control bus carries the command signals, and it allows communication between devices that are contained within the CPU. The last one is the address bus, and it is a bus that is used to specify a physical address. So in short, it is the one that selects the signals as they emerge from the microprocessor. And in simple terms, somebody can wonder what a bus is. And a bus is a communication system that transfers data between devices. So a bus is a communication system that transfers data between devices. So that is what a bus is. So we shall stop there for our today's lesson. Let's meet in our next lesson. Thank you so much.